question number one. When did you take interest in Russia first, and what attracted you most of all? At this first time.
Okay. The very first time that I heard anything about the Soviet Union, I remember when I was 12 years old, and we were very scared of the fall of. We were very scared of the Soviet Union, and there was a lot of propaganda, and it was during the Reagan administration in 1984, and I just remember there was the television show. It was one of the most watched television shows ever, called The Day After, which talked about nuclear war, and the Reagan administration was spending a lot on defense, and they were saying that it was possible to win the Cold War through a nuclear war, and on top of that, there was talk about nuclear winter, which was the idea that if there was nuclear war, then we would basically destroy ourselves, and then all of humanity would die because of the nuclear winter that resulted. And so I was extremely frightened of the Soviet Union. That was pretty much the first experience I had with the Soviet Union growing up with the Cold War propaganda.
Okay, I see.
If you have other questions, like beyond that, we can go past that. So.
No, I understood the idea. Okay.
Okay.
Next question, I guess exactly as interesting as the previous one. How do you feel here now, and are there cultural things really close to you?
Okay. It's been a learning experience here in Moscow. There's so many opportunities as an American. There is a beautiful book called Nothing is Real But Anything is Possible that was written by an American. And it just talks about how many opportunities there are, but how difficult it is to understand the culture. Like, for example, to paraphrase Winston Churchill, he talked about how Russia was an enigma wrapped in a mystery. And it's just really, on the surface level, we seem the same, but in reality, we're very, very much different. But I enjoy the opportunities and the experiences here, and every day for me is an adventure.
Sounds good. I will have to look in vocabulary. What does enigma mean?
Most Americans don't actually know what that is also. It's basically just kind of a mystery. Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah.
But maybe there is something you still want to experience, maybe a traditional cultural event.
Yeah.
What is in your plans?
The organization that I really want to see, there are several organizations that I want to go to and several places that I want to go to in Russia, but the number one place that I want to see is kind of an odd one. In the American news, they claimed that there was an organization in St. Petersburg, and they were actually responsible for the trolling in the 2016 election. And during the 2016 election, there was Russian bots, and then there was Russian websites that were created by the Russians, and the center of it was in St. Petersburg. And so my interest is actually to go there and just to see, like, give my CV my cover letter to the company and say, hey, I'm here to help.
Okay.
I mean, there's other places too that I really want to see, but yeah, that's the big one.
Okay.
I could give you other places if you're interested.
Yes, maybe we will also include them in the text. What other places would you like to see?
There's during the 1950s, there was a study that was started with foxes in Siberia, and these foxes were domesticated because they were trying to show how dogs were were made to be domesticated, which means, dogs used to be like wild. And what happened is that over time, people made those dogs like kind and quiet and soft and nice. And there was an experiment to do the same with the foxes. And there's a place in Siberia, and they've been doing this for 70 years now. And I want to go there and see these foxes, because what happens is, as they become more and more like nicer, their fur, their hair changes color. It becomes lighter, and their ears actually become like fluffy, like a dog. And you could actually buy one of those dogs. You could buy one of those foxes for about $5,000. So I could continue. There's other places too, but that's a big place also. I could continue with another place also, if you want.
Okay, maybe one more example. And
okay, this is an odd one. There's a movie called I don't know. I'm in the presence of a lady, so I won't talk about this one. It has to do with the KGB and a spy school, but maybe we'll save that for another time. So.
Okay. All right. Then the next questions. You have quite impressive list of diplomas and degrees.
Yes.
At your website, but who do you feel yourself to be first of all? Which professional field is most close to you?
Most definitely international relations. The United States internationally is the most violent country in the world. And I've just had a passion for peace, and I've had a passion for changing that. It's something that I've studied since I was a child. I mentioned that when I was 12 years old, I was worried about nuclear war, and studying international relations has always been my passion.
All right. So you studied actually many things, have a lot of an impressive number of diplomas, and I guess quite logical question: do you have your own approach to time management? Because you managed to finish many things.
Yes. I'm from Washington, D.C., and like Moscow, the most ambitious and the most hardworking people tend to go to Washington, D.C. or Los Angeles or New York. And so I'm a workaholic, and I've never really had a vacation. In America, it's common for people to not have any vacation days. And I would say approximately 60% of all Americans don't have any paid vacation, and Americans tend to work a lot, and so even if they have vacation days, they don't take vacation, and so I'm just kind of used to being in Washington D.C., where you're constantly working.
From my point of view, this is very sad. But I have to say, I admit I respect your culture, but from my point of view, this is not very, very human and kind in relation to the employees.
It's I agree, and it's also it's not smart, because people that don't have vacation are not as good workers. They're not as happy, and they're not as productive.
Yes, and to be honest, I never saw a person who could jump over his or her head.
Jump over his head?
Yes, so we have an expression in Russia. Выше головы не прыгнешь. So you can manage only you can manage things only up to some limit.
Yes, yes.
You are not God. You can
Yes.
be active all the time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a good. I like that. I've never heard that analogy before. I like that, Irina.
I like this very much because, luckily this is not about me, but from time to time I see people both in our office and in the streets who look, very exhausted, always in a hurry, and I feel so sorry about them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What did our country, Russia, where you live now, give to you as a professional? Did you get new useful experience or colleagues or maybe even real friends? What did you get here?
From here?
Yes, here in Russia.
Well, I have a great answer there.
Yes.
It's hard to read. It's hard to read from behind, so to backwards. But yeah. I just what has Russia given to me?
Yes, as a professional.
As a profession. Well, it's given me opportunities, I think, more than anything. As I mentioned, the relationship between America and Russia is very complex right now. I understand that Russians kind of have a love-hate relationship with Americans. They love a lot of our culture. Because of propaganda and what's called soft power, but they also fear Americans. But as an American, I'm always in the spotlight, and I'm always kind of a small superstar. I'm given opportunities that I would never have in America. Like, for example, this beautiful conversation with you. In America, I'm just another American, but here my level's a little bit higher. So I think that's what Moscow and what Russia's given me more than anything is opportunities to be more than I really like, to be the best that I can be. It's just like when I was in the Peace Corps Ukraine. I was only 28, and I had an opportunity to work with the embassy and with the Navy, the American military, and I was able to build orphanages for children without parents. And then I also had an opportunity to write a book. And so, like that opportunity in the Peace Corps, Russia offers me, especially Moscow, offers me some incredible opportunities. So.
I guess the last and the longest question.
Yes.
About United States Peace Corps service mentioned on your website. Could you tell our readers a bit more, especially about the mission of this Peace Corps?
Well, the United States Peace Corps was set up by John F. Kennedy in, I believe, 1962, about a year before he was assassinated. And it was set up as this very giving organization, they wanted to help the world. But the reality of the Peace Corps is that it's set up first and foremost as propaganda. It's set up as a soft power propaganda way to influence other societies. And secondly, it's set up as a spy organization. And I'll explain exactly why that is. what happens is that I was in the same situation as all the other Peace Corps volunteers. I finished the Peace Corps, and then I returned to America. And then most of the Peace Corps volunteers, they go to Washington, D.C. And in Washington, D.C., the federal government offers Peace Corps volunteers incentives, or they offer the federal government organizations, they offer them opportunities to hire Peace Corps volunteers. And they give them like special promotions to hire Peace Corps volunteers. And so all these Peace Corps volunteers come from these other countries. They understand the culture. They understand everything about like the mentality, and they go to the State Department. I actually applied for the State Department myself twice, and I failed both times, which is common. I took the test twice and I failed. But also the CIA recruits from those people too, because they understand and they know that these people understand the culture, they've learned the language. And so the United States Peace Corps, Russia kicked out the United States Peace Corps in 1996, or I think it's 1996. It was maybe 2002, I believe. They kicked out the United States Peace Corps, and the reason they kicked out the Peace Corps was they said it was because the Peace Corps volunteers were spying.
Не, пожалуйста. А салфеточку дадите бумажную, чтобы у нас салфеточки. Спасибо. I see. So they expel the Peace Corps in December 2002, right?
Yes. So, so I think that I don't know the intelligence, of course, but I think that the Peace Corps volunteers, I can speak for myself, and I'm not a spy, and I wasn't a spy for Ukraine. And I think that most of the Peace Corps volunteers are not spies. In fact, I would venture to guess none of them are. But what happens is they come back to America, and then they're promoted as spies. They're basically, they go to work in the CIA, and so I think it was correct that Russia kicked out the Peace Corps into 2002. And further, right now, there's a lot of controversy with two other American religions actually here. There's one's called the Jehovah's Witness, and the other one is Mormons. And I used to be Mormon. And what happens is the Mormons, they go around, and I don't know if you've seen them before. They wear black suits like this, and there's two of them, and then they are all over in Russia. And what happens is that they're not spies, okay? But they go around and they learn the language. They're completely in the culture, and they learn the language. And then once they learn the language, then they finish their 2 years. They're very patriotic as people. They're extremely patriotic Americans. And so then they finish their service in the Mormon Church. It's usually 2 years for men and a year and a half for women. They go back to America, and many of them, the number one church, the Mormon Church, is Brigham Young University in Utah, and it's a huge university. The Brigham Young University, it's a huge university. And so what they'll do is that these Mormon missionaries will come back to BYU, and then they have these job fairs. These large groups of people come, these businesses from all over the country, and they try to promote to work for them once they graduate. The CIA has a huge presence in BYU at this Brigham Young University, and so these Mormon missionaries come back, and then there's recruiting for the CIA, and then they become CIA agents against Russia. And so what I argue is that the Russian government has continued to restrict the Mormon Church and I feel that they should actually be kicked out of the Russia, because the Mormon Church is indirectly a recruiting station for the CIA.
Quite a complicated story.
Did you want me to explain a little bit more? Did you understand, or
Maybe a bit more.
a bit?
I'm not sure. I will leave all the details in the text.
Of course, yeah.
Otherwise, it would be a very, very long Mormon story about Mormons.
Yes, of course.
Yes,
Yeah.
but maybe yes, you will explain a little bit. What do? They are a religious organization.
Yes. And I guess the question is how do you get intelligence in any intelligence organization? Is how do you get people to become agents? And the what I'm trying to say is that the Peace Corps was used to recruit like agents and spies, and the Mormon Church is being used for that same reason. So.
Now it's more clear. Because to be honest, I had no idea about that before.
Yeah.
Being so far from intelligence service. Yes, I read once. I read an article about Mormons, but not those living in Russia, but living in the United States. I read that usually they have many wives, like Muslim people.
Yes. Yeah, they used to, but yes, that's what most people know about them. But they're very active here. There's a lot of Mormons here in Moscow. Not like it's a small minority of people, and these are very powerful people that come over, and like businessmen with a lot of connections. So yeah.
And the final question is related to the future. We will not make predictions, but it is interesting. What professional and educational plans do you hope to actualize to make them come true?
Yes. The biggest dream that I have, everybody has a dream, and the biggest dream that I have is to be the first member of the first American to ever be in the Duma. Now, I understand the reality of that. I understand all of the barriers to being able to ever do that. But short term, towards that goal of helping the Russian government, I am finishing both of my degrees in next spring for number one, and then I am also starting a consultancy firm right now, and it's with a Russian companion, because I can't start as an American. I'm suspected of being something bad with the Russian government, and so to start an organization like a consultancy organization, it has to be through with a Russian. And so we're starting an organization right now, and my plan is to be with him for a year, and then basically to start an organization with on my own after 1 year. I mentioned in the text, I mentioned about the Gorbachev Fund. This organization that we met each other, and it's also funded by the government, the Russian government, and there's other think tanks that really try to influence Russians, the way that Russia is seen throughout the world, and I would just love ideally to be able to work for one of those organizations. So.
Russian Institute for Strategic Studies.
Yes, have you heard of it?
Yes, I only heard.
Okay, it's the ideal one, and it's the most difficult one for me as an American to ever work for, because the SVR, the members of the SVR, work there actively, and well, they're former SBR agents basically, and they work in the SBR, and then they go to work there. And I actually, just to try to see what would happen, is I actually turned in a resume and a cover letter. I went there with a translator, and it was quite an interesting experience. And I realized all the barriers, of course. Americans tend to sometimes be naive. And there's a saying, I love that in Russian, it's an optimist is, a pessimist rather, is an informed optimist. It's a Russian saying. And I realized the barriers to my dreams, but I also think that as a optimistic American, anything's possible.
As for me, so I believe if you have motivation and energy, then yes, it is realistic.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know. It's not realistic to dream to become an Olympic champion after I don't know after 30 years. But all the rest, I guess, is normal.
So you don't have a dream to be an Olympic champion?
Oh no, because professional sportsmen, they are in our country. I don't know about America, but in our country, professional sportsmen, they are mostly disabled persons because of the higher, higher pressure, high workload during this training, too intensive training.
They become disabled?
They become disabled after 30 years old.
Wow.
99, I have a physician, a good physician I know, and he told me that really up to 30 they are more or less disabled. Especially, figure skaters, football players, athletes, because they have a very, very intensive training, and their joints, their backbone are very, very, suffer a lot.
Wow. See, I think it's different in America, because only wrestlers, for example, and football players have those problems. Yeah. So.
Our sportsmen, I guess, have very intensive training. Too intense.
Yeah. Wow. Huh.
Yes, and they are not healthy after 30.
So what's your dreams? What's your goal? We always ask this in America, like, what's your 10-year goal or your 5-year goal?
Oh, to be honest, I can tell you, this is not for...
Okay, we'll turn it off.
Yes, this is not